Hello everyone and welcome to today's video working in Gorilla. I'm going to be showing you how to screen out participants based on a total score from a questionnaire. Now, there are particular use cases where we might use this kind of approach, and that is, for example, when we are maybe working with some difficult behaviors and we know that certain people are a bit more vulnerable to those behaviors than others, for example, gambling. So I've already gone ahead and done a bit of a search, and I'm going to be building today something called the Problematic Gambling Severity Index, and it is a common screener used to identify individuals that may have problematic gambling. So I've gone to the Gambling Commission's website. If we scroll down, here we can see the Problem Gambling Severity Index. It was published by Ferris and Wynn, not me, in 2001. It contains 9 items assessed on a 4-point Likert scale ranging from never to almost always. It asks participants to consider their behaviors towards gambling over the past 12 months, and it's scored on what's called a zero index system, where never equals 0 and almost always equals 3. And that's going to be important in a little moment. So we're going to jump back into our Gorilla project. We're going to create a new project, and I'm going to call this Gambling Project Casper. Remember, in previous videos I've suggested that it's really useful to name projects clearly and possibly add your name to it so that any collaborators or supervisors are able to find your project quite easily. If their Gorilla account looks anything like mine, you end up with quite a few projects, so it's a good idea to label them properly. I clicked create, and now I'm going to click questionnaire, and I'm just going to call this the PGSI, so the Problematic Gambling Severity Index, and click create. Okay. And here we are, we're in the questionnaire builder. I'm going to click on page 1, I'm going to click add object, and as we've mentioned already, this was using a Likert scale, so the question type that we're going to be using is called rating scale. Why it's not called Likert scale, I don't know, but it is what it is. So we click on rating scale, we click create, and here we go. We've got our rating scale, a rating question added in there. So I'm just going to jump back over to our problem gambling screen, and I'm going to select think about the last 12 months, and I'm going to pop that in as the question text there. Then we're going to set up our responses, which is never or new, never, sometimes, I think it's most of the time, and almost always. Okay, let's just double check that I've got that correct. Most of the time, almost always. Fabulous. Okay, and then what we're going to do is scroll down a little bit further, and we want to add in 9 questions. So to do that, we're going to click this toggle here, add multiple questions and items, and I'm going to add in 9 of them. So we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Okay, and then all we need to do is copy over the text for each question, for example this one, and paste it into each item. So I'm going to go ahead and do that now. Okay, so I've pulled in all of the questions that I need, and I've got my 9 Likert questions there. The only thing that I need to do now is change the name to PGSI, or Problem Gambling Index. And then what we're going to do is jump over into the scorer. So that's, you can find on the left-hand side here. It's called scoring. We're going to click on new score. So I'm just going to call this PGSI total, like that. Click confirm. And then what we're going to do is this basically creates a store, a global variable that will contain the PGSI score that the participant gets from answering all of the questions in the questionnaire. So to do this, we're going to click include. We're going to say think about the last 12 months. So that is definitely the question that we want to include. And we've got here the scoring mode, and we need to change index to 0. So what's happened here is that because it's treating all of this as one big questionnaire, basically, we don't need to specify individual questions. If we wanted to do that, we would select there and just toggle in which questions we wanted. But we're quite happy just as default total score with never equals 0, which matches what the website tells us here, and 3 almost always equal is almost always is scored as 3. Okay, so if you scroll down, what we see here is that if a participant gets a score of 8 or more, this represents problematic gambling. So what we might need to do is screen out anybody that has reached a total score of 8 or more. So what we then do is, once we've done that, we're going to jump into our projects, click the wrong one there, and now I just need to commit this. So created PGSI, and now I need to create an experiment. So we're going to call this gambling experiment, and we're going to click edit, click on the plus sign, click on the questionnaire, click on PGSI. So there we go, we've got that one in there. And then we're going to now add in branch nodes. So very similar to what we did in the last video. I'm not going to add any extra stuff in because frankly we don't really need it for the demonstration, but we're going to say that this is called continue. There we are. We're going to select the PGSI total score that we created in our questionnaire, and we're going to say is if this is less than 8, continue. Whoops. Then we're going to scroll down and we're going to say reject, and we're going to select our total score. We're going to say if it is equal to or greater than 8, we're going to reject them, and then I'm going to make that default branch again. So the logic behind here is that in the rare circumstance where Gorilla cannot sort of guess or cannot figure out whether or not they got a score of 8 less than 8, then it's always going to reject them. So in any sort of edge cases where perhaps it's not been given the right amount of information, it's going to reject those participants. And that just makes sure that your participants are safe and you're not asking them to do anything that they shouldn't be doing. The last thing we need to do is click on the add in a reject node. There we go. So drag that down in. And what will happen now is that if they come along, they do the PGSI. If they get a score greater than 8, they'll be rejected. If it's less than 8, they will continue in the study. Okay? And that is a simple way of how you can screen people out based on your on a participant's response on a particular questionnaire that they've already answered in your study. If you wanted to add in other things, so like they go on and do something like the banger gambling task, for example, you could click on this continue here. Let's say task. Actually, I do have where is it? Student projects. I do have a copy of the banger task there. There we go. And that's where it can go. So what would happen now is that they would do the PGSI, come into the branch. If they've got a score less than 8, they will do the bangling gambler task. Otherwise, they'd be rejected. Okay, so click commit. Say created the experiment, added in branching, screening out participants with a PGSI score less than 8. Nope. More than 8. Commit. There we go. And that is everything. Thank you very much for sticking through this video. I hope you found it useful. If you have any questions, please pop them in the comments. And I'll see you in the next video. Bye.